Welcome back to the YouTube channel. Sorry, I've been out of commission for a while. I've been working really hard to launch my new business and can't wait to tell you about it. But on today's episode, we are going to dive straight into real estate exit strategies when it comes to creative financing, okay? If you've got a sub to or a creative deal and you need a way to exit creatively, well, we've got Joe Swingle on the show today, and he's going to go through and break down everything that you guys need to know about lease options, wraps, marketing, selling, JV stuff a little bit, and we will dive right into that.
So big shout out to him. We're going to be talking about a topic that's really misunderstood today. It's lease options and wraps. Most of the questions people ask me are about wraps and lease options. And they're really important to know when you're doing creative real estate, because not every creative real estate deal pencils for long-term rental, which is what most of us are used to. So what is a lease option? A lease option is two agreements. So one is a lease agreement and one is an option agreement. This is for you when you bought a property. You've already bought it sub to, you've already bought it cash. You can do it for cash deals, you can do it for sub to deals, you can do it for hard money deals, you can do it for anything. There's two agreements, one's a lease agreement, one's an option agreement. The lease agreement obviously communicates to your tenant that they're paying a certain amount per month, more than your mortgage ideally. The option agreement communicates to your tenant buyer that you have a certain amount of time where you're locked in at a fixed purchase price, and you can, whenever you're able to be eligible for traditional financing, you can refinance for this amount. A little bit confusing. I'll explain why you would want to do this. Some of the pros are you're the owner of the property. You get appreciation, depreciation, cash flow, equity, pay down on the underlying mortgage, and little to no maintenance, and you still have the ability to cash out refinance or get liens against the home. The reason why you would want to do this is, we'll use your example, in Tucson. You bought a property in Tucson from me, and we're partnering on it, and we're going to maybe do a lease option. The payment is almost $1,600 a month, not quite. Rents are about the same. They're like $1,700 a month. So anybody who's on traditional rentals will know that that's negative cash flow, because you have maintenance every month. You've got all sorts of problems that will come up, tenants, toilets, all these things. So when you have a $100 spread, there's no deal here. But when you do a lease option, you're trading ownership of the home for two things. You're trading it for maintenance, and you're trading it for them being able to buy it. So most of your lease option tenant buyers are going to be people who have bad or no credit. Or they're self-employed, or they can't get approved for some reason. They don't even have bank statements sometimes. So they make good money, but they can't afford the home. They'll give you money up front. They'll give you $10K is what we go for, 10 to 20K, and then that will buy them an option agreement for 5 to 10 years, whatever you want to do. And then during that option agreement, they will lease the property from you for a certain amount, usually higher than this by at least $150. So in this case, you could get probably $1,850 conservative. So now you've just spread out a little more. You can make $250 a month on this property, and you won't have any maintenance. And the reason why is because you're giving that responsibility to your tenant buyer, because your tenant buyer now has perceived ownership in the home. So I've done a lot of lease options. Water heater blows out. I'm not even in the state. You know, it's in Kansas or something. Water heater blows out, and they go and they fix the water heater. And the reason why they fix the water heater is because we have a fixed price that we've already established. Let's just say it's $125K. And when we signed this option, I said, you can buy this home for $125,000 in 5 years. You have 5 years to get that financing. And so they don't want to lose their option agreement. They don't want to miss their rent and lose out on the 10K that they brought to the table. So what do? They fix the water heater, they do the upgrades. Sometimes they put a new roof on. Sometimes they fix the flooring. And then in the meantime, they're fixing their credit, or they're opening a bank account and reporting their bank statements. And then they're able to get approved for a loan in the next 2 to 5 years and refinance the other property. When you get your money back, you can go put it into something else. So the reason why you want to do this, number one, is when you don't have a lot of cash flow. Because when you're tight on cash flow, you're not going to be able to do a traditional rental. You can't do it because you're going to have maintenance. So the lease option, they're taking care of maintenance. They're also giving you money up front. They have skin in the game. So you know, all right, this person, if they default, it doesn't even matter. Because I can go evict them and bring somebody new in and get another 10K and do another lease option with them. So it's not that you want that necessarily. It's good if everything works out. But I've had it go both ways. Somebody doesn't make their payment. Yes, storm happening. Now the property is insured, so you know, if the roof falls in, I've had to file insurance claims on a property from a storm damage or something like that. Usually a roof won't fall in unless, you know, something catastrophic happens and you can get insurance on it anyway. But even if it did, it's not your responsibility as the owner of the property to fix that, because in your agreement, you signed away ownership of the property to them for that 5 years. And what that means is that the negatives are, if something breaks, they have to fix it, right? But the positives for them, and a lot of investors buy properties with an option agreement, because what they can do is they can go say, I'm going to buy this property for a 200K option for 10 years. And then during that 10 years, they go and they build another property on the lot, and they increase the value double. And then they go and they refinance for their option price, which is way less. So the pro for them is they can do stuff like that. They can value add the property, go refinance for the price that you established with them. So if you establish 125, if they add an addition and make the home worth 200, then they can refinance for that amount instead of for this amount here. And you gave that away. You give that option away to them when you sign the lease option, because the benefit to you is zero maintenance and that some of that money up front for them to own that option. And the benefit for them is they can do value add as long as it's, you know, approved by the city, of course, and then they can refinance for a higher amount if they want. So even if the roof caves in, they can choose to leave the property, but it's actually not your responsibility to fix it. Like I said, something like that, I've had a storm hit a house of mine that I own. We just had to file an insurance claim and get that money, and then we fixed the house. But even if you couldn't get the claim, it's not your responsibility as the owner to fix the home, because you've signed away your ownership for the next 5 years to that tenant buyer. Like a 5-year escrow. You know what I mean? Because it's a purchase agreement for them. You can't violate that agreement. You can't sell it to somebody else unless you agree with that. Hey, I'm selling it to this guy that's for less than what your option is, and your agreement's going to stay in place. That's a little more complicated, but their option agreement is what we would call perceived ownership, which is why they do stuff like fix water heaters and do repairs to the home and do value adds like additions and stuff, because they want to get that value out of the home, they want to live there. And so, like I said, the pros to this are you're not actually giving away the deed to the buyer. So you get to keep the cash flow, you get to keep the appreciation on your taxes if you want. You get to keep the equity paid out as well on your underlying mortgage. So if you bought the home sub-2 at 3% interest and you're renting it for $500 more than that, you're actually keeping $500 a month instead of like $150 a month because of maintenance, like a regular rental. And you're also still getting all that pay down every month. So if they don't execute until year 4, you've got 4 years worth of mortgage pay down. And they don't get any of that towards the equity because there's a lot of laws that we're going to talk about when we talk about wraps that prevent you from giving equity to someone who can't get approved for a loan. You're not allowed to just give equity to random people because you're predatorily lending, right? So you can't just say, I'm going to give you a loan on this home, and then when they don't make the payment because it was too much to begin with, you foreclose on them and take all their money. There's laws against that, which we're going to talk about when we get into wraps. So with the lease option, you can avoid having to qualify them for the loan, because you're just doing a regular rental, and then you're just doing a regular option agreement. You can even do option agreements without someone renting the house. So you could say, I own this home and it's being rented to someone else, but you as an investor, if you give me 10K, I'll let you have an option on this house for the next 5 years. I'm not saying you'd ever do that, but those are two separate agreements. So you can break them apart. They don't have to be together. Any other questions about the lease option? Yes?
I've heard some people do this for 10-year option. You mentioned 5 to 10 years. So what are the pros and cons, or what's the benefit of?
It's whatever you can negotiate. So the terms of my lease options differ every time. One of the last lease options that I did was on a home in Buckeye, and we were talking about just owner financing the home to them, but they can't actually get approved for that because they don't even have bank statements. They get paid in cash. They own a landscaping company, they make the bank, but they have no bank statements. So we had to do a lease option, but they were like, I won't give you 10, I'll give you 20. And so what we did with that, I was like, okay, you're giving me more, so in exchange, I'll give you a 5-year option, which is shorter than 10. And I also won't raise the price during that 5 years. Sometimes during option agreements, they have it at 200K maybe, and they say if you don't execute in year 1, that's a 3, 4, 5% increase in appreciation. So a 3% increase in appreciation, an extra 6K. So after year 1, their option agreement is now 206K. And the option the year after is 200 whatever K. In my case, they give me 20K up front because they don't have bank statements, but they have a lot of money. And that was worth it for me to say, if you do that, I would be willing to not have some appreciation. And so they get a benefit there, I get a benefit as well because they get that money up front. And I know they've got skin in the game, if they don't make their payments, then I get to evict them, and I get to keep that money. That's not money that gets refunded later because they purchased a certain amount of time with your option agreement. Now, you have to separate the two. If you don't separate the two agreements, you're not going to win in court. Now, we know this works because it has won in court. And our agreements are from Sean, the same guy Pace uses, and everybody should be using those agreements. If you're not in sub 2, then you should partner with either a TC or somebody in sub 2 that has these agreements, so that if anything goes south, you do have the legal right to take that property back.
Sean St. Clair.
Yeah.
Can you only evict your tenant if they miss their payment?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons you can evict based on this agreement here and what you negotiate with them. In my lease agreement, the one Sean wrote, you actually list every person that's going to be living in the house. So if other people are living in the house besides who they list, then that's actually a reason to evict also. So, and if they violate their option, if they violate their lease, both contracts are void. So, and that's kind of why, that's kind of why that happens.
And to add to that, though, you want to check your county's rules too, because in South Carolina, if you do a lease option, you should only do it for 12 months.
Yep.
Just because it's, as a normal lease, typically a lease about 12 months if you go to court. What ends up happening is I had a friend that has over 100 lease options out in South Carolina. He's lost 2 cases, and both of them was because the judge said your lease options were 3 years, they were 5 years, when a lease is typically 12 months. So you want to make sure that you're checking to where you're doing your lease options for as well, because each county is different, each judge is different as well.
Yeah. So we usually do 12-month leases, and we just renew it every year. Another 12 months. We don't do a whole 5-year lease if it's a 5-year option. We just do 12-month lease. We do it again the next year, again the next year, again the next year until they execute the option. And if they don't, then you have to renegotiate the option agreement. They rate more down or something like that. We are becoming the bank, and you are not owning the property anymore. So the pros to that are you're getting a higher down payment. You're getting higher monthly payments than a lease option because your payment to your buyer is not contingent on what rents are in the area, it's contingent on interest rates. So even if it's just a 3%, you can go around the property for 9%. And that's a huge spread right there. That's about 6% spread you get per month. So, and rents might only be $1,500 and your wrap payment is $2,100. That's okay because you're owning home. We're seeing a bunch of people do it right now because interest rates are at 7%. They're paying more per month than they would if they just rented, but they want to own a home. So they're willing to do it. So wraps are used when you want to get a higher monthly payment, then you can get a lease option. They're not dependent on rents. There's no management, absolutely none. And you have the ability to sell the notes or to hypothecate the notes. You can also sell the home for more than retail value, and it insulates you against market conditions because notes don't lose value necessarily in a recession. Property values lose value, but notes don't necessarily lose value as long as they're being paid in a recession. So many people own homes that were underwater and just made their payments all the way through. So the note never loses its value. Their home lost a lot of value, but they kept making their payments, they kept their home, and the payments were made until the loan matured. So it doesn't necessarily depend on what the market's doing when you do a wrap. And what a wrap is when you buy a home, maybe sub 2, you buy a home sub 2 at 3% interest, and you go and you sell the home with a wrap for 8% interest. So you actually give them the deed, or you give them something called a land contract, or an agreement for sale, or a contract for deed, or even a lease option if you structure it correctly. We won't go into that. But
Different for
wraps, what was that?
It's different for every state.
It's different for every state. So in Texas, you can't do land contracts. You can't do lease options. Or at least it's not worth it. You have to pay a lot of money to have an attorney do that paperwork for you.
Anyway, staying on track.
Yeah. So in Texas, for example, we buy a home sub 2. I actually bought a home in El Paso like this. Our interest rate was about 3%. And we went and we wrapped it for about 8.5%. He brought a down payment. It paid off my cost into the deal. I brought about 10K down to buy the home sub 2. And then I got somebody else to bring me 15K down to buy it with a wrap. And then we made the difference. It was about $1,000 a month in cash flow. And that's because we bumped the interest up about 5 points per month. It was worth it for him because him as the buyer, he can't get approved for a traditional loan because he was a construction worker and he made great money, but he writes off all of his income. So he made great money, reports no income, which is most of us, actually. Honestly, right? Everybody here is not making anything. So he made a bunch of money, but he has no income, according to the government. He can't get a loan, but with a wrap, all you care about is your debt to income. And so this is one of the most important things in the wrap, and one of the cons to the wrap is that, and you don't have to do this, the laws of lending in our country allow you to actually wrap homes and owner finance homes at least 1 to 3 a year without using the licensed RMLO. But if you're doing more than that, you have to use a licensed RMLO. You have to follow certain rules. You have to do 30-year mortgages, fixed interest, can't have balloons, things like that. So the cons to this are you lose out on appreciation once you sell the home for the price you sell it for, even if it's 10% over value. You're not selling for 200, you're selling it for 220 now because somebody's willing to pay that because they can't get a loan anywhere else. That's great, but you're not going to get appreciation. You're not going to get depreciation because you don't own the home anymore. You own a note in return. You may have to foreclose on the property. In certain states, it doesn't matter. In Texas, it almost doesn't matter because it's a 60-day foreclosure process. In other states like New York, you'll never get the home back ever. And I know that because I have a place in New York that I wrapped. So I know that, you know? So, and then the regulation, you gotta have an RMLO, ideally. And there's a couple reasons why. If you ever go to court over it, you want to be able to say to the judge, I underwrote them, and they had the ability to repay the loan.
Residential mortgage loan officer.
Registered.
Residential mortgage loan originator. Is what
residential or registered?
I think it's residential,
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
Yeah, because it's residential property.
Because we're talking about residential here. Yeah.
You can just pay someone a fee for that, right?
Yes, you can. So the one in Texas, it was a little pricey. I think it was like $1,500 or something, but it's very worth it because you're not breaking any laws. And the other thing is, if you want to sell that note to a note buyer or a bank, you can now do that because you have proof that this borrower is a good borrower and will make payments every month because you got them underwritten by a licensed mortgage loaner. Yes.
If you're getting them underwritten by a licensed loan officer, is the loan officer looking at your cash, what they are?
So for example, the home I sold in Buckeye on a lease option, they had no bank statements. They only got paid in cash. one of my requirements for them was you have to get a bank account, and you have to start putting your money in a bank account. Because even when you're doing a wrap, you have to show the RMLO that you have either 2 months, or 12 months of bank statements or 2 years of tax returns. So the RMLO still uses income to verify them. They just don't care about credit, they don't care about a lot of the other problems that you're gonna run into. They just wanna see that your debt to income is enough where you're gonna be able to repay that loan. I think it's like 52 to 58% or something, debt to income.
You can pass on the loan origination fees to your buyer.
If you're assigning it, you can pass it right along to somebody else.
Well, if you're wrapping it for someone, you can give it to them too.
Yep, and you can give it to your wrap buyer, which is what I did on my home in El Paso. He paid the closing costs, he paid the RMLO, and they underwrote him. If they have a problem, which most of the time there's one thing on the report that doesn't work out, it's easy to fix. All you need is a cosigner, you need proof of 12 months of utilities or something like that, and then they'll push it through. So if you can do that, then you've originated yourself some paper that now has a lot of value, and you can go sell that paper to somebody else. And so this is what I'm going to talk about is the acquisition side of all these deals is, because there's a lot of ways you can buy properties. One of the ways is cash. One of the ways is hard money. And one of the ways is private money, right? And then you've also got the crazy stuff, the sub 2. You've got the seller financing, and you've got the traditional financing, okay? So, I've done this before, this is why I'm talking about it. Most people don't know about it. A lot of the wholesalers who are getting homes for 60% of the value, they're selling them for 70, 75% of the value, and that's it. They're done with the transaction, they're moving on. You don't have to do that, actually. You can buy a deal for 60% of the value, and you can sell it with hard money, actually, or cash, or private money, and then you can go and you can sell it on a raft to somebody else. So I bought a home in West Virginia for 60 grand, and I wrapped it to somebody else for 120 grand. And I got about 10% down, and I got about 10% interest in the middle. So I could have maybe flipped this, I could have sold it, and made a little bit of money in between, maybe 20 grand, 30 grand, whatever. Instead, I wrapped it to somebody for under 20 grand, and I originated 2 notes. I originated a note for about 77K, and a note for about 33K, a little less than 33K. So they brought about 10 to 12,000 down. And they're both at 10%. When you do something like that, if you buy a home with hard money at 12% interest, but then you sell it with owner financing, and you originate 2 notes, you can actually sell this underlying note and pay off your 60K that you got for the property, that you used to buy the property from your hard money, and you get to keep this as cash flow. So even if you're buying properties cash, you're not buying sub 2, you're not buying sub financing, you're not buying for loan and an interest rate, 30 years mortgage. You can buy a home with hard money at 12% interest only. As long as you buy it deep enough, you can go wrap it for more, and then you can go sell your underlying note to pay off your hard money and keep cash flow on the property. So a lot of the time, there's this guy, Eric Sage, if anybody knows him, he's a dope guy, he's really good. That's where I learned this whole thing. That's why I did this with my West Virginia property in the first place. He was teaching when you're buying homes cash, instead of you flipping them or wholesaling them, making 20 grand, why don't you sell them with owner financing? Because you can get about 10% more than what ARV is when you sell with owner financing, because you're working with a buyer pool that really wants to own a home enough, they will pay 10% over. And then you can originate 2 notes and sell the first and pay off all your debt in the property and even make profit. So for some of these deals, people are making the same amount they would have made if they flipped or wholesaled the property, and then they're also keeping a small note in second position, free and clear, that pays them every month, a couple $100 a month. So these ways, if you're buying cash, hard money, or private money, this is what you want to do. It's called dual note origination. You can wrap the home to someone. You want to use a licensed mortgage loan originator, and then you want to originate 2 notes and sell the first. After it's seasoned, some people will even buy them at close. And you usually want to provide a discount So mine was for 77. I haven't even sold it yet. I just have kept it because I'm in the deal very good. But I can go sell this note now for 60K or less, which is over 10, 20% discount. And someone will buy that from me and I'll pay off all my debt in the deal and still get about $300 a month cash flow. Yes?
Why would you make that 77K a note and take that as a discount rather than taking it as cash
Well,
and keeping that?
sure. Well, if I want to get the note sold quickly, and I'm in really well on equity, like in this case, I'm in at 60K, I can sell this for a 10% discount or 15% discount and still make money over what I owe on the home. Because 10% off of 77 is $7,700. I'm still over the 60K amount that I put into the property. So I'll actually make about $9,000.
Hey introverts, I just wanted to take a moment to express my gratitude for you subscribing to the channel. And if you haven't already done so, please hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm. And for now, back to the show.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
if you kept it as cash, you'd still have that 17K versus this.
Yes, but if you have debt, so for example, if you bought with hard money and you have a 12% interest only loan, you can't really wrap that on a 30-year because it's interest only, right? There's no pay down. So if you do it that way, as long as you have the deal deep enough, you can go sell that note to somebody else and pay off your hard money completely. And they'll own the first position note and you'll own the second position note. And that's why Eric Sage does this, because now he's sitting on hundreds of notes that are on free and clear in second position. And he's already made all his money off of the first position because he's usually selling them for more than this amount that he got into the property. He'll sell them he'll have a 60K hard money loan, but he'll sell this first note for 69K. So he'll make 9K and he'll keep $300 a month on the back end.
How long does you think for the hard money?
Well, you mean, and I still haven't paid it off because my payment's really good here. I don't want to pay it off. But I can go sell this note now to somebody else for a really steep discount and pay off my private money lender and go use them for something else. They're fine being in the deal. They're wanting long-term return, but I can pay them off and go take that 60K and put it somewhere else if I wanted to. And I don't even have to do that, but if I did, I could even probably make a little bit of money because the spread here is so big. So that's what some people are doing. If you're buying cash hard money or with private money, that's what you want to do because you want to get out of your money as fast as possible. Now, if you're buying this way, seller finance or traditional finance, you're going to have a lot less equity. And if you have a lot less equity, you probably can't sell your first position note and pay off all the debt involved. Most of the homes that are bought sub-2, you're not going to be able to sell the first position note and then pay off the underlying lien. At least none of the ones I've bought had enough equity where I can do that. But what you can do is, if you have a sub-2 deal, this happens a lot in Phoenix. You have a 4% interest rate on the sub-2 deal, and the payment, because prices have gotten so high in Phoenix, your payment's like $2,300 a month on that, with taxes and insurance and everything, and rents are only $2,100 a month. So how are you going to make money there? You can't even do a lease option unless you charge them a crazy amount, which they probably won't do. What you can do is, everybody now is paying 7%. So they're paying 7% over here, and all of a sudden your payment changes when you pull out a mortgage calculator actually. So if you have a loan for $300,000, at
7.45.
4% interest, yeah, it's,
No, that's like, that's
yeah, so it's like the payment to the actual mortgage, the P&I, would be about $1,432 a month. Okay, so at 4%, this payment here, we'll just get rid of this here. You've got a $300,000 loan at 4% interest. Your payment's $1,432. 25 P&I. At 7% interest, your payment goes up to $1,995, 91. So that's a huge difference. That's a $500 difference. And if rents are only $1,200 a month in the area, most people are going to pass on that deal because they know, I can't get anything out of the property. But when you see an interest rate of 4% and you know people are willing to pay 7% interest, now all of a sudden from a deal that's worthless, you've got $500 a month in cash flow. No management at all because you wrapped it, and you have a deed of trust as your security. So if they don't make the payment, you keep their down payment, you keep their monthly payments, you get the home back, you go do it again. That's why people are doing this right now in Phoenix a lot. Once you stay, most people who are buying here in the Phoenix metro, they're wrapping their deals because they're getting 4.5% interest, but the payment is $300 more than rent after you factor everything in. And people are buying homes for 7.5% interest. I have a friend who bought a home for 8% interest. So I could wrap a home to him easily, and he would gladly pay it, and I would make $500 a month, and he would be happy about it too, because he can't get a better rate from the mortgage company.
And you get super creative with this deal. Like our Buckeye property we just sold, we did a 5-1 ARB on our end. So it started at 6.95 every year. Started for the first 5 years at 6.95. Started year 6, it's 7.95. Year 7, it's 8.95, and then Arizona's got a 10% usury law, so we capped it at 9.95. So on year 9, it goes. So from us making only $350 a month, to all the way to making like $1,300 by the 9th year.
So you're encouraging them to refinance.
I'm encouraged, yeah, because I have a 10-year balloon.
Yep.
You can't balloon on a wrap.
Yeah. So, and you don't have to buy homes sub-2 to do this. You can buy them seller finance. You can even go get traditional financing. I've wrapped homes, like he said, at 9.9%, 10%.
Where do you find those buyers though?
Where
do you find those people?
That's what I'm going to talk about next, actually.
Take a moment, and I'm just kidding. There's no sponsors. We don't have sponsors. I'm just trying to express my gratitude here for you watching the show, and please subscribe and like. And
We're going to talk about the marketing involved. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so you're saying they get underwritten by an RMLO, but if they're self-employed and they're doing a lot of deductibles, and they're not showing a lot of income on their taxes, how are they getting qualified?
Great question. We actually do the qualification ourselves really quick, and all you need is 12 months bank statements, and then their credit report to see not what their credit is, but what their debt to income is, how many auto loans, credit cards, whatever. So, for example, a lot of my buyers, the one that I'm using right now for a lease option in Casa Grande, they have no credit because they've always bought everything cash. So they're actually the most responsible buyer you can get. They're better than anyone with a W-2. They make way more money. They're way more responsible. They buy their cars cash. They buy everything cash. But they can't buy a home cash because it's $300K. So they have bank statements though, 12 months worth. We can see, okay, they have $10K a month consistently. You take the 12 months, you average it out. So if they make $120K in a year, you average out their bank statements, you're like, okay, that's $10K a month. You look at their credit report, you say, oh, they have one auto loan for
to thank
$500
our sponsors.
So we now know that their debt to income is $500 a month to $10,000 a month. That's what the RMLO is going to look at. They're going to look at that and they're going to say, this guy's way under the 52 to 58% that we need. We'll approve them. They don't care about that they have no credit. They don't care that they're self-employed. They don't care about any of that. Sometimes they have contingencies. I've had a lot of RMLOs get back to me and be like, we need to see, a cable bill for the last 12 months or something like that, and then we'll approve them. Or they need a co-signer, their debt to income is 8% off of where it needs to be. You get a co-signer and they're approved. So they took their credit report and found out what debts they have in their name, and then they averaged them out, and that was how they determined their debt to income. So the only thing the RMLO is going to look at is debt to income. You want to use an RMLO. You don't have to, as long as you're doing under 3 of these a year and you're not doing a balloon and you're doing 30-year fixed interest, you actually don't have to use an RMLO. I recommend using one because then later down the road you can sell the note. And you're legally good. If anything goes to court, you have an RMLO do it that you maybe made your buyer pay for instead of you. So you're in the clean, There's nothing that can come back to get you. So that's why I say just use it for everything, even if you're only planning to do 2 in a year and you're going to be 30-year fixed interest. Use an RMLO. I would recommend just staying clean on everything you do. We'll get into the marketing side of how you find these people in the first place. Almost every single home that I've ever sold on a wrap or a lease option, I sold on Facebook Marketplace, and I usually would pay for advertising. I'll make a post. Facebook Marketplace is really brutal with you. They'll shut you down really quick.
I'm in jail.
Yeah, exactly. So you get in jail quick. It took me probably 2 years of getting shut out and back in on Facebook Marketplace to figure out what worked. So this is really valuable here. This is the most valuable part of this when you're trying to find a wrap buyer. You want to market on Facebook Marketplace, and you want to put in your front page of your ad. You want to have writing on. I go to Canva, and then I edit my front image, and I just say rent to own, seller financing, rent to own, red letters across it. And then I post it on Marketplace, and I boost it. I usually pay like $100 a day of advertising. You don't even have to do that. There's some properties I didn't even do that with, but I usually pay for advertising on there. And then people start hitting you up in your description. You want to make it very clear that it's a rent-to-own property. People understand that terminology. They sometimes understand seller finance, sometimes they don't. For some reason, rent-to-own is just easy for everyone. I put rent-to-own in there. I talk about the home. I talk about that if you have a sizable amount that you can bring to the table, then we'll do a rent-to-own with you. I avoid words like down payment. I avoid words like financing because Facebook will shut you down for quote-unquote selling money. They don't want you to be selling lending services on there. So I avoid all that. I just say it's rent-to-own. No banks, bad credit. Like you can use all those terms. You just want to avoid saying stuff about financing. You want to avoid using the term owner financing in your post. You'll get shut down. And then when people come in, the most important thing is trust. People are not going to trust you because there's rent-to-own scams on Facebook. And a lot of people that reach out to me go, how do I know this is real? Like, this other guy was posting and wanted me to pay him all this money before I see the property. Because they obviously didn't own the property and they were like, oh, rent-to-owns involve you bringing something down. You have to pay me $500 to get to go see the property. And then they would take the money and run. So, trust is the most important thing. So I don't bring up price, I don't bring up the down payment, I don't bring up the terms, ever, when I'm talking. Instead, I want them to view the property first. If I'm local, I want to meet with them at the property so that they can meet me face to face. I have a Facebook page with reviews. I have a Facebook Marketplace page that also has reviews so that people can see that people were on there. And then I always start the conversation with, is there anything holding you back from being approved for a traditional mortgage at this time? And the reason why you want to do that, and Jeff and I were talking about this just this week, is if you start the conversation like that, then they're going to remember all the reasons they couldn't buy a home. And that's the big thing. I couldn't buy a home because I have no credit, because I always bought my cars in cash. Couldn't buy a home because I'm self-employed and I don't report any of my income. I can't buy a home because I'm an I-10, I don't even have a social. I'm here legally, but I don't have a social. You want them to talk about that, and then you want to meet with them at the property. And you want to remind them all the time that, oh yeah, why couldn't you buy a home again? Well, I have an I-10. I do not have a social. And it's hard for banks to lend to people like me when you're self-employed and you have an I-10. We'll do it 100% as long as you follow X, Y, and Z of these rules. So as far as marketing, that's what I do. You want to vet and verify the people you're talking to. You want to make sure that they're legit. You want to meet with them in person. If you don't meet with them in person, you want to see the home. Let them see the home. You want to get photo ID and then let them have access to the property. But the trust is the main thing. So you want to get on the phone. You want to establish that they can't get a loan. That's why they're talking to you. So whatever reasons they have for wanting to talk to you are going to be pretty serious. They have an eviction. They have bad credit. Whatever. If you want to bring that up, yeah.
Is there a certain amount that you walk away for a down payment? Like,
No.
so like, can they have economic interest in the property?
With owner financing, yes. You want to give them the deed if you can, actually. So I owner financed a property in Texas. Like I said, I think I had a 4% interest rate. I owner financed it for like 9.5 or something. He got the deed, and I bought it sub 2, so there's still an underlying mortgage. And then there's another mortgage, my wrap mortgage to them. The underlying mortgage was for like $175,000 and 4%. My mortgage to him was about $205,000 for 9%, and they paid $220 and brought $15 down. And then they got the deed, so they're on the county records as the owner. And I am inside the county records as a deed of trust. And so they just pay that every month, and that's what I get. I don't have any ownership in that home anymore. So, and that's kind of how you want it, but
On the flip side of that, is there an maximum for a lease option?
well,
Next question.
you mean like price-wise?
No, like the option amount. Like, is there an option amount that can get a little higher?
I think you want to stay between 10 and 20. I've never done more than 20 grand. I've done 20 grand. I've never done more than that. I think you could do it. I just think you would want to, at that point, you'd want to start talking on refinancing, because I don't know what happens if you go to court and you get 40 grand down for a lease option to not even get any equity in place. You know what I mean? You can get 40 grand down.
That's kind of what.
The same result as owner financing. I've done land contracts. The first time I ever bought some too, I sold on a land contract in Indiana. And I didn't give them the deed. I still hold the deed. But I gave them a land contract, and we wrote up mortgage paperwork, and we have that recorded with the county. And they make payments every month on that, and they do get pay down every month. So it's not like a lease option. Lease option, you don't get any pay down because you're leasing the home. With wraps, you have to give them pay down, and you have to underwrite them to be able to do that. Because if you start giving people pay down, and then you didn't underwrite them, and then you go to court, then the court's going to be like, you can't foreclose on this person because they've been giving you all this money, you've been giving them equity in the property. So lease options, you give them zero equity. Wraps, you give them a ton of equity, and the benefit for you is no management, higher interest, you keep a note, all that stuff. Does all that make sense, kind of? Awesome.
So I'm right in the heat of trying to, do this marketing, and I'm struggling. This is my first wrap. And I'm thankful for Joe to be JV with me on this. And I find it as it's kind of back and forth. Some people, you get that trust by hopping on the phone with them. Some people, as soon as you mention hop on a call, they ghost you. They want to text.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you balance? Like, I don't know who's on the other end.
Yeah.
Do I keep texting with them and giving them details over text, or I'm as soon as I start quickly saying, well, yeah, let's hop on a call. I can explain some things to you. Let's get you, give the opportunity to go see the property. I want to introduce that really quick so that they know, hey, this is. I'm going to have the opportunity to go see the property. But so many people don't get back to me.
Yeah.
And when up until a few days ago when we talked, I was doing more of that up front over text, and I was getting a lot more interaction with some people. It's kind of a balance, and I'm just trying to figure that out. Like that trust thing is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: is the reason why the people ghost you a lot of the time is because they're people who want to break into the property. To be honest with you, there's so many people who hit you up that want to break into the property, and if you don't button it up nicely, they're gonna actually do that and start squatting, which has happened to me plenty of times. Out of state, and I have to go deal with it or something. So that happened to me in Oklahoma. It happened to me in Kentucky, and I had to go to the state and actually evict them. So you don't want to make that mistake. You want to button it up, and you want to talk to them on the phone or FaceTime with them, or get photo ID before they view the property if you're not there in person. But if you're local, you want to get everybody in person. You want to talk to them. You want to look at their Facebook profile. I look at all their Facebook profiles and see if they're a real person, if they have pictures of their family, stuff like that. And then that's kind of what I go from there. But it's a process and it's a grind, and it's just as much sales as when you're buying a home sub two. It's just as much. It's not any. Maybe it's different. It's not easier though. Wouldn't you agree? You got to do just as much sales and just as much objection handling and all of the.
You have to disqualify and qualify real estate.
Hey introverted entrepreneurs, welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to take a quick moment and say, always check with your real estate attorney for all these types of transactions.
One of the biggest things for us is when we wrap our deals, we're talking with people. The very most important thing is I don't give out any information about the house, obviously besides the address and stuff. If they're like, can I go see it? I'm like, well, here, we got to go through this question. Like, we have to figure out, like, how much money do you need? Can you prove it? Like, how much money do you have down? Because if I'm looking for a $40,000 down payment, but you only have $5,000, I'm not going to let you into the house, or nor am I going to keep the lockbox, right? So you eliminate a lot of people from being able to go to that house without you actually saying, like, can you actually afford the down payment that I'm looking for, or can you actually afford the house in general? Because we still, when I tell people about the RMLO, I literally tell them, look, there's an application just so you can show me that you have the ability to repay the loan. Laws make me do that. Otherwise, I want to make sure that we're compliant for the both of us. Right?
Yeah.
And if they're like, no, I like no this or this, then I'm not going to give you the lockbox
Yeah.
at all. That lockbox is the only key to the house.
Yeah.
That's how you avoid squatters.
And another thing I've been doing is if I'm local, especially in Arizona, I actually want them to see the property before we even talk numbers. I want them to be sold on the property first. I want to get as many eyeballs as I can, meet them in person, be there with them, and make them fall in love with the place. And you'll find that they'll go see it, they'll fall in love with it, and then they'll do whatever they possibly can to get approved for that home. I sold one on a wrap, and it was a land contract in Montana. It was like a town of 400 people. The guy went to see it, and he was like, I want it super bad. I was like, well, you have to have this much down, because he didn't. And he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna pull from retirement. So sometimes if you can get them to see the place, and at least you get photo ID, because they're not gonna do anything shady, you get them to see the place first, they're gonna fall in love with that, they'll do whatever they can to go. And honestly, putting your retirement in a home is a way smarter move anyway. So, if someone can pull from retirement or something and go buy a home and have equity in it, when they can't buy otherwise, it's a way better move. So that's as far as the marketing side goes. That's all I got, unless you guys got questions about these topics.
What's something you struggle with now?
Well, to be honest, I struggle with leads a lot, and the leads are tough because I get sent. I turn down more stuff than I buy by 10x probably, because you get sent a lot of stuff that is. I got sent something the other day from a friend who I've known for almost 6 years in real estate, and it was a 7% interest rate loan. So people get a lot of stuff under contract that's not good. And that's, you gotta vet and filter through hundreds of properties before you buy one sometimes. Unless you're direct to seller, which is what I recommend, is going direct to the sellers. Then you can be the one to filter through them first. You don't have to get them secondhand. And it's also the hardest part of the business, is going direct to the sellers. Nobody wants to do it. It's hard, and you get chewed out, but it's way better. I want to talk about is insurance for wraps. Just to try to imagine what that's like, You're buying it from someone else who the mortgage is in their name, but you need to be insured, but then you're wrapping it to someone else who's gonna live in the home who needs to be able to file an insurance claim so that they can get stuff if a storm hits. But you also don't want the bank to call the note due because the seller's not on the insurance. So that's probably the most complicated thing we get questions about. Do all of you have Instagram? Most people have Instagram.
What is that?
You should pull it out and you should follow this girl, Perla Argyle on Instagram. She's a transaction coordinator. She's gonna be TCing all of my deals. She TCs all the Bash Bros deals. And she will you'll hire her, it's the same price as any other TC, but she'll do all your paperwork, work with your sellers, work with title, and then she'll also set up your insurance if you're trying to buy a home on a wrap. So you don't even, nowadays, so when you started in this business, you had to know all this stuff. Now you don't need to even know that stuff, because Pearl will set up your insurance and your servicing on the back end. So that's who I use. I think you all, if you're trying to get into this business, you want to be connected to her, because she's the only person I know that will actually do that. But, you know, what was that?
Argyle.
Perla Argyle. So on Instagram, if you type in @Perla Argyle, she'll be there. On Facebook, she's Perla with Fontes Argyle or something. But she's someone you want to reach out to when you're doing deals, because if you're confused about the paperwork, which you will be, you can just hand it to her and it'll be on autopilot until it closes.
How much did she pay you to say that?
Deals with her, so I've made money with her, for sure, but yeah.
No, she just wrote up one of our contracts for Texas.
Yeah.
So we actually do use her.
Yeah.
I believe.
She's not here because she's at the camp in Montana.
I invited her because I know she's.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff.
Exactly. She's someone to know for sure if you're trying to get into this side of the business. Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me out. that's my Instagram. I post the deals I'm doing on there. I'm new to it, so I'm still figuring it out. But I post all my HUDs and I post deals, and I'm gonna start posting more about some of the crazy stuff like this that people might be a little bit confused about. So I also brought insurance is such a big question, so I actually brought an insurance declaration page if anyone wants to look at that. Who's interested in wraps and see how it was written up, you can actually take a look at this one and just see what it's like on there. So that's all I got, guys, unless you got questions.
Awesome, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.